Bertie Okafor's first thought when she saw the woman come up the road was that the horse had lasted longer than the rider. The animal was a grulla mare, steel gray and travel-worn, but still moving with the careful, even stride of a horse that has been well handled. The woman on her back was a different story. She sat upright in the saddle the way people sit upright when they're working hard not to show that they can't. Spine stiff, chin level, the particular posture of someone holding themselves together through an act of sustained, deliberate will. She was young, maybe 24, maybe older, if the road had been kind to her, which from the look of things it hadn't been. Her coat was a man's coat, too wide in the shoulders and missing 2 buttons. Her hat had been reshaped by weather into something its maker wouldn't have recognized. There was a rifle in the scabbard and a bedroll tied behind the saddle and nothing else. No pack horse, no supplies visible, just the mare and the rifle, and the woman who looked like she'd been carrying something heavy for a very long time and was getting tired of it. Bertie watched from the doorway of the barn. Inside behind her, her son Marcus was oiling harness leather and not doing a particularly good job of it, and the morning chores were half done, and the fence on the north side of the east pasture had been down since Tuesday. These were the facts of the morning. She added the woman on the grulla mare to them and waited to see what she would become. The woman stopped at the gate and looked at the ranch the way someone looks at a place they are deciding about. Not greedily, not with the flat assessment of someone calculating what it's worth. More the way you look at something when you are very tired and you are trying to determine whether it is safe enough to be tired in. Then she dismounted, which she did slowly, and tied the mare to the gatepost and walked to the house. Bertie met her at the door before she knocked. "Ma'am," the woman said. She took her hat off, which was an old gesture, the kind that gets trained into a person early and stays long after everything else has been stripped away. Her hair was dark and cut short in a practical way, and her eyes were brown and steady and had the particular quality of eyes that have made a decision and are not going back on it. "I can see from the road that you're working this place with one hand short. Your east fence is down and your barn door's hanging on one hinge and your water line from the creek is running slow, which usually means a partial blockage up near the source." She paused. "I know water systems. I know fence work and I know horses and I can pull a calf in the dark if I have to. I'm asking for work in exchange for a place to sleep and 2 meals a day. That's all." Bertie Okafor was 58 years old and had been running the Stone Creek property outside of Pincher Creek, Alberta, for 31 of those years, first with her husband and then without him, and she had a sense for people that had been sharpened by 3 decades of necessity. She looked at the woman in front of her for a long moment. "What's your name?" she asked. "June Alderton. Where are you coming from, June Alderton?" "East of Lethbridge, most recently." A pause, small and carefully placed. "Before that, further east." "That's not an answer." "No," June said. "It isn't." Bertie looked at her. The young woman looked back. Not defiant, not hiding, exactly. More the way someone looks when they have become accustomed to a question they are not yet ready to answer and have gotten very good at acknowledging that without lying about it. From inside the house, Marcus called out, "Who is it, Ma?" Bertie did not answer immediately. She was still deciding, and then from the direction of the east pasture, carried on the October air from somewhere past the tree line, came a sound that settled the question entirely, the short, sharp bawl of a cow in distress. Not the complaint of an animal that is hungry or cold, the particular cry of something hurt or stuck or in trouble that it cannot get out of on its own. June Alderton's head turned before Bertie had fully processed the sound. Her eyes moved to the tree line, to the east pasture, to the gap in the fence line that was visible even from here. "That's a cow down," she said. "You've got maybe 20 minutes before it gets worse." She looked at Bertie. "Do you want to talk about my references, or do you want me to go find out what's wrong with your animal?" Bertie stepped back from the door. "The bay roan in the second stall," she said. "Take him." June Alderton was already moving. She could ride. Bertie saw that in the first 3 seconds, watching from the gate while Marcus came out of the barn, with the harness oil still on his hands, and stood beside her without speaking. June took the roan out of the stall and had him saddled and moving before Marcus had finished wiping his palms on his jeans. She rode the way people ride when they have done it so long that the horse has simply become an extension of the decision they've already made. She went over the ridge and out of sight. Marcus said, "Who is that?" "I'm not sure yet," Bertie said. They waited. 31 minutes later, June came back over the ridge with the injured cow walking ahead of her, moving slow but moving, with her calf pressed tight against her flank. The calf was newborn and should not have been, not in October, which meant the cow had delivered early and likely alone, somewhere in the brush past the tree line, and had been in trouble when June found her. June had done something with her scarf, which was no longer around her neck. The cow's front left leg was wrapped with it, neatly and tightly, the way you wrap a thing when you know what you are doing, and you don't have time to do anything more than what's necessary. She brought them into the near pasture, closed the gate, and rode back to where Bertie and Marcus were standing. She delivered early, June said, dismounting with the same careful economy she'd used coming off her own horse. "The calf is small, but she's nursing, which is what matters. The leg's a soft tissue injury, not a break. She'll need rest and watching for a few days." She handed Marcus the roan's reins. "Your east fence is down in 3 sections, not 1. Someone's been pulling the staples, not the weather." Marcus straightened, pulling them, methodically. Not kids. Someone who knows what they're doing and is taking their time about it. June looked at Bertie. "Do you have neighbors to the east who would want your cattle in their pasture?" Bertie's expression shifted. Not surprise, exactly. Recognition. "Come inside," she said. "I'll put the kettle on." In the days that followed, June Alderton proved useful in the particular way that some people are useful, not because they announce their competence or make a production of their effort, but because they move through a place and things simply get fixed. The fence went up in 2 days, every section of it, walked and tested and reinforced. The barn door got a new hinge, properly set this time, and stopped swinging in the wind in a way that had been keeping the horses anxious for weeks. The water line from the creek got cleared of a debris jam 30 meters upstream, which turned out to be deliberate rather than accidental, a fact June reported to Bertie with the same matter-of-fact calm she applied to everything. She worked without needing to be watched. She did not go into the house uninvited. She asked before she changed anything, which Bertie had long since stopped expecting from anyone, and she treated the land with the specific attentiveness of someone who understands that a piece of ground is not simply space you occupy, but something you are in relationship with, something that asks things of you. She ate supper with them each evening, quietly, and listened more than she spoke, which Marcus initially interpreted as unfriendliness and Bertie read as something else. She asked questions about the property, which sections drained well and which held water in spring, where the best winter shelter was for the cattle, where the fence had been before Bertie's husband rebuilt it in 1987. Marcus noticed that his mother answered all of these questions and that the answers were getting longer. He also noticed that June never talked about where she'd come from, not evasively, not in the sharp way of someone concealing something criminal, more in the way of someone who is still too close to a thing to look at it straight. You could hear it in the silences she placed around certain words, the careful way she said before without filling in what came before it. On the 3rd evening, when the October cold had settled properly and they were sitting after supper with the wood stove doing its work, Bertie set down her mug and said, "June, what happened east of Lethbridge?" June was quiet for a moment. The fire made its sounds. "My husband's family ran cattle near Tabor," she said finally. "We got married when I was 22. It was his family's land. Been in the family since his grandfather came from Manitoba." She turned the mug in her hands. "He died 18 months ago. Tractor accident in the spring. He was 31. Bertie said nothing. She let the silence be what it was. "The land went to his brother," June said. That was in the will. There was some talk of me staying on, some kind of arrangement, but... She stopped. But it didn't work out that way. By the fall, I was out. I'm sorry, Bertie said. I don't want to be sorry. June's voice was even, but the evenness was the kind that takes effort to maintain. I want to be useful. I want to find somewhere I can actually do something. I've been moving since October of last year, and I'm tired of... She paused, started again. I'm tired of moving toward things I'm not sure are there. Bertie looked at her. You've been trying to find something that'll hold, she said. June looked up. Most people spend half their lives doing that, Bertie said. Don't let anyone tell you there's a timeline on it. It was not comfortable. The thing Bertie didn't say at the supper table that evening. It sat with her through the next morning and into the afternoon, and she didn't say it to Marcus either, though he could tell something was turning in her. The thing was this. She knew who had been pulling the fence staples on the east section. His name was Dale Pitfield, and he ran the Rockshore operation 12 kilometers to the east. 3,000 acres of good Alberta grassland that had been expanding steadily for 8 years, through a combination of purchase and pressure, and the particular patience of a man who is used to waiting for people to run out of options before he moves. He had come to Bertie twice about Stone Creek. The first time with a number that was reasonable and an air of neighborly concern. The second time with a lawyer and a number that was lower, which is not how offers are supposed to go, and she had told him so clearly. He had not come back. But since the spring, things had been going wrong at Stone Creek in small, consistent, hard-to-prove ways. The water line, the fences, a section of roof on the equipment shed that had been fine in August and was suddenly not fine in September. Nothing dramatic. Nothing you could take to the RCMP without sounding like a person who blames their bad luck on their neighbors. Just the slow accumulation of things going wrong in ways that cost time and money and energy, and Bertie was 58 years old and running this operation with her son, who was a good young man but not her husband, and there were mornings when the weight of it was heavier than she wanted anyone to see. She had not told June any of this, but June had been here for 11 days, and Bertie suspected that June had already arrived at most of it on her own. She was not wrong. On the 12th day, a truck came up the road. A good truck, the kind that announces money without making a show of it, and in it came Dale Pitfield, with a man Bertie didn't recognize in the passenger seat, who had the slightly overdressed look of someone who works in an office and has been sent into the field against his preferences. Bertie was in the barn when she heard the truck. She came out and found June already standing in the yard, her hands in her coat pockets, watching the truck park with the same steady, unhurried attention she gave everything. "You know that truck?" June asked, without turning. "I know who it belongs to." June was quiet for a moment. "The fence staples?" Bertie said yes without saying anything. "Go back in the barn," June said. "Please." Bertie almost said that this was her property and she would handle her own affairs. She was 58 years old and had been doing exactly that for the better part of 3 decades. But she looked at June's face and she recognized something in it. Not recklessness, not anger. The very particular calm of someone who has decided what they are going to do and has gotten very quiet about it. She went back in the barn. She did not go far. Dale Pitfield got out of the truck with the easy movement of a man who does not expect resistance. He was somewhere in his 50s, broad through the chest, with the comfortable confidence of a man who has gotten most things he's wanted by the simple application of patience and the fact that other people tire before he does. He looked at June, and his expression arranged itself into something neighborly. "I'm looking for Bertie Okafor," he said. "She's busy," June said. "Can I help you?" A slight pause. He looked her over with the quick, calibrating look of someone reassessing. "I don't think we've met." "No," June said. "We haven't. I manage operations here. If you have business with Stone Creek, you can speak with me." The man from the passenger seat had gotten out now and was looking at his phone and then at the property with the expression of someone making calculations. Pitfield's tone stayed warm. "I have an offer for Mrs. Okafor, a genuine one. The market's not getting easier, and this operation is, well. He gestured at the property with the vague sympathy of someone describing a problem that happens not to be theirs. Running a place like this alone takes a toll. I want to help her see what the best path forward might look like. Mrs. Okafor's path forward, June said, is the same as it was the last time you brought an offer and the time before that. This is her land, it's not for sale. Pitfield's eyes moved toward the barn, then back to June. His tone stayed pleasant, which was worse somehow than if it hadn't. And who exactly are you, to be speaking on her behalf? I'm the person who fixed your debris jam in the creek line, June said, and reset your fence staples. And I'll be the one to call the RCMP detachment in Pincher Creek when I send them the photos I took of the east section last Tuesday. 3 separate sets of staples, all pulled clean, all in the same 48-hour window. She let that sit for a moment. I grew up around Tabor. I know what weather does to a fence, and I know what a person does to a fence, and those are not the same thing. The office man had stopped looking at his phone. Pitfield's expression had not changed, which took some effort. You're making an accusation that's difficult to substantiate. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, June said. I'm describing what I documented. Whether anyone substantiates it is up to other people. She looked at him steadily. You've been patient about this property for a long time, I understand that. But I'm telling you that what you've been waiting for isn't coming. Bertie Okafor isn't going to run out of help. A silence. The wind moved across the October yard and pushed at the gate. Pitfield looked toward the barn for a long time. Then he looked at June. Something in the calculation behind his eyes shifted very slightly, like a weight being moved to a different position. You're new here, he said. It was not quite a threat and not quite an observation. Yes, June said, but I'm not leaving. He got back in the truck. The office man followed quickly. They backed out of the yard and drove away down the road toward the east, and June stood and watched until they were gone, and then she let out a breath and turned around, and Bertie was standing in the barn doorway with her arms crossed, and an expression on her face that June could not immediately read. I had those photos on my phone as well, Bertie said. I just hadn't decided what to do with them. I know, June said. I found them by accident. I wasn't looking. Bertie looked at her for a long moment. Come side, she said. Supper's almost ready. That evening, after Marcus had gone to check on the early calf and the wood stove had settled into its comfortable rhythm, Bertie poured 2 cups of tea and sat down across from June at the kitchen table. She did not begin with what she wanted to say. She began, instead, with her husband. His name had been Emmanuel, she said, and he had come to southern Alberta from Ontario in 1981 with a used pickup truck and a land claim he'd been saving for since he was 19 years old. He had found the Stone Creek quarter section by accident, driving lost on a gravel road on a September afternoon, and he had pulled over and looked at the creek and the grass and the line of cottonwoods along the east fence and said out loud to no one that this was the one. He had been right. They had built everything here from the ground up, the house and the barn and the fences and the herd. 3 decades of work that had the particular quality of work done by people who are not doing it for money but for the thing underneath money, which is the need to make something real, something that will be there in the morning when you come back to it. Emmanuel had died of a stroke in the spring of 2019, and Bertie had buried him on the hill behind the equipment shed where you could see the whole south pasture, and she had kept running the operation because there was nothing else she could imagine doing, and also because she was not going to let a piece of ground that a good man had loved become something Dale Pitfield owned. Marcus is a good son, she said. He came back after his father died and he hasn't left. But he's 26 and he's carrying more weight than he should, and I've been watching him get tired. She looked at the table. And I've been getting tired, and I didn't want to see it. June said nothing. She was listening the way she listened to everything, with her whole attention. I need someone who knows what they're doing, Bertie said. Not just for a season. I need someone who can be here when Marcus isn't, Who can manage the cattle side of things and the infrastructure and who won't leave when something goes wrong. She looked up. I'm not offering you a wage. I can't afford to add a wage. What I can offer is a share. If you're willing to work this place through the winter, and if it's working by spring, I want to draw up an arrangement, a formal one. 15% of the operation to start, with right of first purchase if I ever decide to sell. June was still. Why? She said. Because you found that calf in the dark on your first day here. Because you didn't flinch in that yard today, and you didn't do anything foolish either. And believe me, one of those is easy, and the other one isn't. Bertie wrapped both hands around her mug. And because you asked about the water drainage in the low pasture, and my husband used to say that you can tell everything about a person by the questions they ask about land. If they ask about what it's worth, they're thinking about money. If they ask about how it moves, they're thinking about whether they can love it. June's jaw was working very slightly. She did not look away. She did not try to make the moment smaller than it was. I'll earn it, she said. Every % of it. I expect you will, Bertie said. That's why I'm offering. Pitfield sent a letter in November through a lawyer in Calgary, which was a more expensive escalation than his previous approach, but not a surprising one. The letter used the word acquisition several times and referenced the challenges facing small agricultural operations in the current climate, which was a particular kind of language that means nothing specific and implies everything intended. Bertie had a lawyer in Lethbridge, a woman named Patricia Chow, who had handled Emmanuel's estate and who had a dry, specific intelligence and very little patience for letters that used the word acquisition. She wrote back in terms that were brief and not unfriendly and left no room for interpretation. The Stone Creek property was not under consideration for sale or acquisition. Any further correspondence of this nature would be documented and retained. In December, Pitfield came back in person. He did not call ahead. He found June at the gate before he reached the house, which may have been a coincidence, and was probably not. She was mending wire on the east section, the same section that had been pulled loose twice now, and she had with her the roan and her tools and a thermos of coffee, and she looked up when the truck stopped and waited. Pitfield got out alone this time. I want to talk to Bertie, he said. Mrs. Okafor's attorney has responded to your last communication, June said. If you have further matters to discuss, that's the channel. I'm not here about the letter. He stopped a few feet from the fence. Up close, in the winter light, he looked like what he was. A man who had been working on something for a long time and was running out of patience with it. I want you to understand something. I have been trying to do this the right way. Reasonable offer, reasonable terms. I understand that, June said. And I'm telling you that the reasonable offers have been considered and declined. She's going to have a hard winter. Then we'll have a hard winter. June looked at him without any particular heat in it, which was more unsettling than heat would have been. Mr. Pitfield, I lost land I should have kept. I know exactly what that feels like, and I'm not going to watch it happen here. She pushed a new staple into the post. Go home. He stood for a moment longer. He was looking at the fence line, at the work she'd done, at the quality of it, which told him something he didn't want to know. He went home. He did not come back after that. The winter was hard, as promised. 3 weeks in January where the temperature did not get above -25, and the water lines needed checking twice a day, and the cattle stayed in the near pasture, burning through the hay supply faster than was comfortable. June worked through it alongside Marcus, and Marcus, who had initially been polite to her, in the cautious way of someone not sure how long a stranger is staying, had by February dropped the politeness in favor of something more like the specific shorthand that develops between people who have moved through difficult things together. They worked without discussion. A look across the barn said enough. Bertie watched this. She watched a lot of things and said less than people expected her to. In March, when the thaw began and the south pasture showed the first thin green and the creek ran free again under the last week of ice, something was different at Stone Creek. It was not dramatic. It was not something you could have pointed to on a Tuesday afternoon and said, This is the moment. It was more like a gradual settling, like a house oscillating to its foundation after a long season of cold. The sound of 3 people eating supper together. The sound of Marcus and June arguing amiably about the best rotation for the east pasture, and both of them being partly right. The sound of work being done by people who are doing it not because they have to, but because it is theirs to do. On a Friday evening in April, Bertie's lawyer sent the finalized agreement by email and printed copies by post. 15%, clearly stated. Right of first purchase, clearly stated. June read it at the kitchen table and signed it without ceremony and passed it back to Bertie, and that was that. After supper, June walked out to the south pasture fence. The light was long and very gold, the way Alberta light gets in late April when it means something, and the cattle were moving through the new grass with the slow, pleased weight of animals that have come through a hard season and arrived somewhere good. She sat on the top rail of the fence, the way she used to sit on fences when she was young, before she'd learned to be careful about what she let herself want. Bertie came out after a while and climbed up beside her, which she did with more difficulty than she once had, and less complaint than Marcus would have allowed her. They sat. "You called home," Bertie said. It was not quite a question, my sister in swift current. June was quiet for a moment. "We haven't talked much the last couple of years. I didn't want to explain." She looked at the pasture. "I think I was waiting until I had something to explain other than the thing that went wrong, and now I have something." She was quiet again. She might come out in the summer, see the place. Bertie looked at the south fence line, every post straight, the wire taut and properly tensioned. At the water trough by the near barn, rebuilt with stones that would hold through another decade of Alberta freeze and thaw. At the hay bales stacked in the equipment shed, neatly and economically, the way a person stacks things when they are planning to be there next year. "Emmanuel always said the land decides," Bertie said. "Not the person. You can want a place, but the place has to want you back." June considered this. "How do you know?" she asked. "When it does." Bertie thought about it. The evening light held. Down in the pasture, the roan gelding picked his way along the fence line with the leisurely air of a horse doing a job he enjoys, which is the finest thing a horse can be doing. "You stop asking," Bertie said. "One day, you just stop asking whether you belong here, and you start thinking about what needs to be done tomorrow. And that's the answer." June sat with that for a moment. Below them, the cattle moved through the April grass, and the creek made its sounds, and the cottonwoods along the east fence were just beginning to bud. Marcus came out of the barn and looked up at them on the fence, and raised a hand, and Bertie raised hers back, and June did too. And that was a small thing, but it was not a small thing at all. She'd had been on this road for 18 months, looking for something she couldn't quite name. She knew, looking back, that she had found it somewhere in October, walking up a gravel road toward a barn door hanging on one hinge, with a grulla mare at her back, and nothing to lose, and the particular freedom that lives in that. You don't always see the moment when the moving stops, but it stops.